So today I'm gonna do a quick video on this corner of the engine bay. This is where the sprinkler reservoir goes, as well as the evaporative control canister. It's a carbon canister. John Twist at University of Motors did a really great video on the how to manage your carbon control canister, your vapor evaporation canister. But it was pretty old and the resolution's really good, really low. So I think I'm gonna update that one a little bit and talk about that today. This is where it goes, and this is what the canister looks like. When you open it up on the bottom, the first thing that you'll see is this little cover right here, and it is being suspended from the bottom with a spring. So that spring kind of goes right in here. In my case, this spring was really rusty, so I cleaned it up as best I could so that when I put it back, it won't be a problem. So you have the spring, then this little separator, and then a whole bunch of carbon pieces, which I don't know if you can see, there's a lot of rust in here too. So I'm not going to reuse this. I'm going to go ahead and replace this with fish carbon. Yay! That's very easy to find in the fish store. And then at the top of that, on top of the carbon, way deep inside the canister, there was this fine piece of screen, also very rusty. And so we're not going to put that in. And just keeping with the fish theme, I cut this, a replacement screen, from my son's old lizard terrarium. So I think I'm actually going to make a second one of these just to put over this. Because I think these gaps are a little bit bigger than what the pellets are that I got. So once I get all that together, we'll move on to the mounting. So again, you have screen, then you have, going from the bottom this way, you have the screen, then you have carbon, then you have this cap, and then a spring, and it screws on the bottom. All right, so I got a screen on the bottom. I put a little screen on the top here. I didn't fill it all the way to the top because you still have to fit this in there, and then there's still a spring on here to keep the level where it's going to be, and that spring has plenty of room to compress inside this hole, this little reservoir here. So I'm filling it just so that it goes to the thickness of this right here on the top. That will sit flush right on there. Spring goes up on top of that. And then we'll compress this as we tighten it. So the next part of this is to mount it into the bracket. This bracket goes in the back corner, all the way in the corner where that engine compartment thing is. There's little holes here, and put a little spacer in here, whatnot. But if you can see, this little band where it's supposed to hold the canister just has a strap to connect that. I'm changing that design just a little bit, and I'm going to put a blackened carriage bolt in there. So I'm going to take this hole, which would be on the outside, and I'm going to square this hole so that this carriage bolt, which would normally just fit in there, will fit in, and so that I don't have to have two wrenches to tighten that. I can just tighten it from the back side, and that'll give me the flexibility of moving this band wherever I want it. And I won't have to worry about being able to address the backside with a wrench. So using my little chainsaw file here. This is a little file for filing the teeth on a chainsaw. And I'm going to just make this square. I don't know if you can see how square that is. And that should fit just like that. There you go. Right, so there are 4 bolts that go onto this canister's bracket. 3 of them are 1/4 by 28ths, and they're 3/4 of an inch. And one of them, in this corner right here, this little spot here, is 5/16. So here I have that. I'm replacing all the original bolts with stainless steel because the original ones got all rusty, and I don't want to reproduce that same effect. Now, what you'll notice is that on the front 2 parts of the bracket, there's a little rise in it. So they have these little shims, and you just have to slide that shim up under there when you put this 5/16 bolt in there. Don't put this bolt in the front because it has to match up with this little keeper, and it also matches up with the bracket that holds the windshield wiper canister in there. So I will stop this, and again, when you put the back bolts in, just put them in loosely so that you can adjust. This thing needs to move around, and it's a very flexible piece of metal. So you just need to get it in the right spot before you tighten it all down. All right, so I got all these bolts all connected. They're loosely connected. On this one here, I just want to really quickly recap. It goes from bracket to bracket, and then there's another little flange here. So the order is this one sits flush on the bottom, and then there's a little spacer, just like there was a spacer over here on this other side. There's a spacer right in here, and then this bracket goes on top of the spacer, and then this little flange that holds the fuel lines goes on top of that. This is a little bit longer bolt than these other bolts, the corner bolts. This is a 3/4 versus a half length on those. Or it might be that it's 1 inch versus 3/4, but it's a little bit longer because it has more to travel to get down through the threads. This is kind of a bear to get all of those things all connected and lined up, because everything is spring-loaded and fighting against you. The trick that I did on that was I have a small Phillips screwdriver, and I just ran that down through the center to kind of act as a pilot hole. And once I had that all lined up, I just put down pressure so nothing would move, so that I can put the bolt in there. So that's the trick with this one. Okay, so once you start to the point where you're going to put the canister back in there, make sure that the bottom outlet, actually this is the inlet, this is where the air comes in, make sure that that is pointed kind of at an angle, because it's going to go through this little section right in here. So the little pipe is going to come through here. So you can make sure you have that angled in that right direction. Here's a good example how you can see how convenient it is to square that off and put a carriage bolt in there, so it's real easy to tighten. Second half of this little project today is to put the sprinkler pump on, which goes on those two little posts right there. But we're also going to be replacing the hose that was going from that. The other one was all cracked and leaking and nasty. So this little trick here is how to get it through the grommet. The grommet is a nice tight connection, so you really can't, it's like a wet noodle. You really can't push it through. So if you make it really pointy, you can push it through the grommet, and then you can see it from the other side and pull it through with a pair of needle nose pliers. So let me show you how that works. So here's the hole that it goes in. See if you can see the grommet. Okay, so oriented from where the steering shaft is, you can see this center post right here that supports the steering shaft. Right behind there is the grommet. You can see I've got the sharpened point sticking out. I get a pair of needle nose on it, and it is mine, and I can pull that through. There you go. There you go. That's how that works. Okay, so there you go. Got the sprinklers in. The pump is in place. I got the new wire run back down through there. Got new little squirter heads installed. Boy, those were a pain in the butt. You can see where all the nuts have been replaced. These down here were machine screws, and I just recycled the old ones. Got the rust off of them though. And you can see here I've got this all mounted in. That carriage bolt is going to be really very convenient moving that around, although you probably only install it once and never mess with it. But there you go, a breakdown on how to install the sprinkler canister and the carbon evaporator canister on a 1977 MGB.